Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
So this is a special edition of Beyond Reason Radio. That was what I think one of the highlights of Trump's inaugural address from Inauguration Day. And this will be the show where you can give your take, where I'm going to give my take, where Tom Benton, who's producing, will give his take as well. You can call 407-916-5400, text to 23680. I will tell you one thing. It is before I came into the show today, I happened to hear some of Obama's press conference from yesterday, his last press conference, and I am so glad he is not the president of the United States anymore. I just couldn't take any more of that press conference yesterday. Some of the stuff he was saying. No wonder we're so divided. But I figured today would be a good day to go over, of course, Trump's inaugural address. That's what's on everyone's minds. That's what everyone's talking about. And by the way, what is going on with the protests is just, it's disgusting. And does anyone else find it ironic? Because they had actually some violence in D.C. where they bashed windows and threw stuff at cops and everything. Does anyone find it ironic, though, that one of the restaurants they bashed the windows of was Starbucks, which is the most liberal business you can possibly think of? And
yes,
that's the one.
But it's a symbol of corporate greed.
Oh, geez. Well, they were carrying anarchist flags and communist flags, and some of them, I'm sure, are paid protesters. But listen to the last show if you want to understand why that protests like that are happening. It's just disgusting on a day like this. And, I was looking at social media and everything from some of my friends. Most of my friends, because they're fans of the show, were very positive about it. But there were some who were very negative. I had one person who said she's wearing all black today, and she couldn't even watch it because she's so disgusted. I had another friend on social media who changed his profile picture to just black because it's a sad day for America. Could you imagine if I did something like that during Obama's inauguration? There wasn't mass protests like that during his inauguration. There wasn't violence during his inauguration. There was some protest afterwards, after he was in office and tried to pass stimulus, and then the Tea Party came and rose. But the Tea Party wasn't ever violent. They weren't ever like this. They weren't calling for communism or anarchy. It's just disgusting. It's just disgusting to see. It should not happen. No matter what you think of Trump, it should not be happening today. So what's your take on that? 407-916-5400, text to 23680. You can also follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R, and we are on Facebook Live as well. So I'm going to be honest with you. There's some really, really good parts of Trump's speech. In fact, most of it was actually very good. Most of it was very good, and I will tell you why. There was some of it that I did not like, and I'll tell you why. And then I'm also going to talk about my favorite inaugural address in history. And, because on days like today, there's different reactions from different people. Some people get emotional, at the patriotism and all, the circumstance and and they just get emotional with goosebumps and tears. Other people just don't care. Obviously, they could care less. Other people get angry, like I was talking about before with protesters. They get angry, they get upset because it's not their guy, all this stuff. I tend to get reflexive, if that makes sense. I tend to reflect on what's going on, reflect on the meaning of it all, reflect on how we got here, reflect on our history as well. So after I watched Trump's inaugural address, I actually went back in history and watched some other inaugural addresses. I watched Reagan's first inaugural address. I watched Obama's first inaugural address. Kennedy's is out there. Then I went and read George Washington's first inaugural address. So I got reflexive, and because I love American history, I find it fascinating and interesting. So I love to compare things to history. So later in the show, I'm going to go over my favorite inaugural addresses of history. Obviously, I have not read them all, at least not, I haven't read them all. So, but I've read the ones I know are really good. And obviously, I can't watch them all because, I couldn't watch George Washington on video or anything.
They're not quite on YouTube yet.
Yeah, it wasn't. I couldn't find it. I was like, George Washington first inaugural YouTube, and it wasn't there. I couldn't understand that. Why wasn't it there? So, but I figure we would start the show today with some cuts from Trump's inaugural address, and these are cuts that I really liked from his speech. As you know, I voted for Trump. I did not support him in the primary. He is a mixed bag to me. I was telling people today, because some people were saying this is very exciting. And I was like, yeah, it's exciting like either a superhero movie or a horror movie. I haven't decided which one it is yet. Hopefully it's like a superhero movie. Those are exciting, but, we'll find out. But I was encouraged by a lot of his speech today. So let's go through it. Let's just go through some of the cuts of his speech that I really liked as well. So here is cut one. Go to cut two, actually, Tom Benson. Cut two. Another part. The first cut I played at the top of the show I really liked. And cut two kind of goes on the similar lines here. Play it for me.
For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you.
So the first two cuts I played, I really like, because a lot of people say Trump is just for himself. Trump is just in this for Trump. He's arrogant, he's cocky, which he can be at times. But all weekend and throughout this whole speech, he's been talking about how this isn't about him, that it's about you, the American people. He has been saying that constantly. He said this movement is about you. What is going to happen is about you. Washington hasn't been focused on you, the American people. And his whole speech was all turning it back to the American people, saying, I am here to work for you. I am here as your servant. And I really liked that. I think maybe Trump is being humbled by his position, but it seems genuine to me that you believe he does love this country. You don't have any really doubts that he loves his country and he wants to work for the people. Now, he's also, it goes to populism as well, which we'll talk about later, but that's something that I really liked about this speech. It was not about himself, which Trump gets criticized all the time for that. But this was not like that at all, and I really, really appreciated it. All right, go to the next cut, Tom Benson, another one I liked.
We will seek friendship and goodwill with the nations of the world, but we do so with the understanding that it is the right of all nations to put their own interests first. We do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example. We will shine for everyone to follow. That was one of my favorite parts of the speech. Not necessarily, it sounds a little isolationist, not really, but what I really liked about it is he talked about how America can shine as an example for the rest of the world. There's a pride of his
of his country in that statement. You know what I mean?
A little Reaganist.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to say this yet because I'm in the positive mode. I went and watched Reagan's first inaugural. To me, there's still no comparison. Reagan's was amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
Phenomenal. I mean, possibly one of the best ever. But I like that he believes in his country. And I think, with Obama, it seemed like he wanted to put us all on an equal plane, put us down to size to be equal to other countries. And he's like, no, I want us to shine as an example that will help lift up other countries. And I think that's great. So that was actually one of my favorite parts of his speech. Another part I liked, this next cut I really liked, actually. So play that for me, Tom.
We will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth. At the bedrock of our politics will be a total allegiance to the United States of America. And through our loyalty to our country, we will rediscover our loyalty to each other. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice.
All right, so two things I really liked about that part of his speech. One, it is so nice to hear a president talk about eradicating radical Islam from the face of the earth. Reagan, I remember Reagan, I don't remember because I was too young at the time, but I've read history, okay? And he got a lot of criticism for calling the Soviet Union the evil empire and calling communism will be in the ash heap of history, for instance. But a lot of people like that, and I think this is a similar thing here, where he's like, look, we can eradicate and defeat this enemy. That is encouraging from our leader. That is encouraging from our commander-in-chief. That is what I really appreciate that. The other part I liked as well, he talked about patriotism. And he talked about, look, we're all still Americans. No matter all our divisions, we're all still Americans. We all have there's no room for prejudice when we're patriots. Now, a lot of people in this country don't seem to want to be that way, but I really, really appreciated that part of his speech as well. Okay, I think I have one more cut. Are we on cut 5? Yeah, I have one more cut of Trump here I want to play before we get to the break. Here it is.
And whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the windswept plains of Nebraska, they look up at the same night sky, they fill their heart with the same dreams, and they are infused with the breath of life by the same almighty Creator.
I loved that. I loved that because it goes back to what I've said before. We're all Americans. We all look, we're all unique. We're all equal on our Creator. We have our breath of life from our Creator. He mentions our Creator, which is great. He actually mentions God a few times. There's other parts of this speech I liked as well. I'm not saying these are the only parts. I just, we only have so much time. But there's a lot of other parts that kind of were on the same tones that I really liked as well. But I really liked, it's just trying to unite us as individual Americans, trying to say, we all live in the same country. We all want the same similar things. We all look at the same night sky. We're all Americans. We all are given life by the same Creator. I think that's very encouraging. I really do. That's the kind of stuff I want to hear from a president. So those are the positives of Trump's speech. I'm getting some text on this as well. You can comment on Facebook Live as well or on Twitter. One texter here says, Mike, I think he is spot on. Now you will see what it looks like when America is firing on all cylinders. It's a beautiful thing to see when it's allowed to happen. Another person said, Yaffee, praise God, Obama is out. And Trump did a great job today with the speech. God bless America and Trump. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. Now I have to get to another part of honest. And there are some parts, because I'm honest, I have to talk about the parts I did not like from his speech. And it's not as much as I liked. I had 5 cuts. Remember this, everyone. I had 5 cuts of things I liked. I think I only have 3 cuts of things I did not like. So, and this is just, you have to look at him as a politician, not as God, not as Messiah. He's not going to get everything 100% right. But I'm actually very, very encouraged from a lot of his speech today and a lot of things he has said this weekend. And I'd love your take as well. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
You know what's beyond reason? Yaffee is now on YouTube. Go to YouTube now and just search Beyond Reason Radio. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason on this special Inauguration Day edition of Beyond Reason Radio. If you have any comments on what you thought of the president's speech, his first inaugural address, you can call 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680. The first segment of the show, I focused on all of the positives of his speech. And to be honest, it was mostly positive. Mostly positive. I was very encouraged by a lot of it. I've been very encouraged. This whole weekend he spoke a couple of times. And he keeps talking about how he's a servant of the people. How he's doing this for the people. How the people deserve the credit for his rise and his movement and him being president. And I think that is a good thing to hear from a president. But there was a couple of things that I'm a little concerned about. And I'm not president, so not all I can do is comment on it. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves, because I don't want to fall into the trap that a lot of Obama supporters, where he could do no wrong. Because I don't worship any politician. We just have to hold them accountable to anything. So there was a couple of things that I'm critical of in his speech. This is the first thing. Play that cut for me.
But for too many of our citizens, a different reality exists. Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities. Rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape of our nation. An education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge. And the crime, and the gangs, and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
Now, I will say this. Brilliant politics. This is what politicians do. This is what makes him popular. This is what will continue to make him popular. What I'm going to say is not as popular. He said the carnage stops right now. I'm almost afraid to leave my house because of how bad those things are. I mean, some of it's true. Our inner cities have problems. Some of our schools have problems. Factories have closed. But the way he put it, it's like when you say the carnage has happened, it doesn't inspire optimism to me. But that's what politicians do. They make the country seem like it's really, really bad, and you need a savior to come save you from it. So it was just a little too much. And the reason I'm pointing this out, and this next cut is actually more on the same lines of this. Play the next cut for me.
And spent trillions and trillions of dollars overseas while America's infrastructure has fallen into disrepair and decay. We've made other countries rich, while the wealth, strength, and confidence of our country has dissipated over the horizon. One by one, the factories shuttered and left our shores, with not even a thought about the millions and millions of American workers that were left behind. The wealth of our middle class has been ripped from their homes and then redistributed all across the world. But that is the past. And now We are looking only to the future.
So when I hear that, I'm thinking, man, I don't want to go outside. What a horrible country out there. Middle class has been ripped from the thing. We've lost all our wealth to other nations in the world. He talked about crime in the other cut. Crime is just awful. Except it's not true. It's just not true. Crime is at record lows and has been going down since the 2000s, since the 90s. Crime has been going down. The middle class, yes, the middle class is smaller, but that's because more people have become richer. Yes, other nations of the world have become more prosperous, but so have we. So it's not like we've redistributed all our wealth to the rest of the world. That's not true. The rest of the world and us have grown. That isn't to say Obama hasn't hurt a lot of that growth. It's been the worst recovery since the Great Recession. But like I said, it's too extreme, and it's not really Trump that I'm criticizing here, because it's what all politicians do. They try to make you seem like things are just awful so they can be the savior and come fix it. It's what politicians do. It's what Obama did. It's what Trump is doing. But I have to just point out some of the things, because some of it's just frankly not true. I mean, I'm sorry to say it. It's not true. He talks about the infrastructure is decaying. Well, in some areas it is, but in other areas it's actually doing very well. It's usually dependent on the state. That thing is overblown. It's usually an excuse to spend more money. We're still the most prosperous, richest nation in the world. So a lot of this is populism, protectionism. It's an excuse to have tariffs, and it goes to his American first, mentality. And it's going to be extremely, extremely popular. And that's why I'm saying what I'm saying here is not going to be very popular right now, because it's going to be very, 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 very popular, what he's saying there. The third cut goes more to this point. This is what he said.
Every decision on trade, on taxes, on immigration, on foreign affairs will be made to benefit American workers and American families. We must protect our borders from the ravages of other countries making our products, stealing our companies, and destroying our jobs. Protection will lead to great prosperity and strength.
So there you go at the end. Protection will lead to great prosperity and strength. I'm all for securing the border, not letting illegals in. But this whole idea that they're ravaging and taking our jobs, once again, I've pointed that out many, many times on the show, it's not true. And what about all the countries that what about all the other companies from other countries that create jobs here? Are we going to want that? I mean, when you start trade wars, you get rid of them. You have South Korea. You have Japan. You have other countries that you have BMW, Germany. You have countries that have factories here. So to say the other countries are all just taking our jobs, it's not true. I'm just pointing that out. And my basic criticism is been my criticism of him the whole time. I didn't hear a lot of conservatism. I heard a lot of populism. I heard a lot of patriotism, which is good. I like patriotism. I heard a lot of love for country, but I didn't hear a lot of conservatism. The idea of the role of government needs to be limited. It needs to be smaller. It needs to be put back in its place. These are the things I don't hear. I still hear a lot of the government is going to do things, but just differently. They're going to do a lot of things, but now it will be for you. We've heard this from politicians before. And that's usually the criticism I have, because they'll take some things that are problems, expand them into major, major, major crises, and then say you need the government to save you. So that's the one thing I'm concerned about. So I did the first segment, all the things I liked about Trump. The second segment, things I'm critical of Trump's inauguration. And we have a lot more to get to. I told you I'm going to go over what are my favorite inaugural addresses in history, and we'll talk more and take your calls and texts and comments as well. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. We're on Facebook Live as well. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Yes, this is another edition of Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. Got some comments coming in on Facebook Live. One person says, Gary says, I'm going to go over comments. By the way, Trump is busy at work today, actually. He's actually done a lot of good things on his first day already. He's signed some executive orders, signed a bill, done some other things that are really encouraging. So I'm going to get to that definitely in a second as well, because Trump's been getting to work, and I'm all for that. One person says, Gary says, make America great again starts today. America will be great again. He will do great. He is for the American people, not people inside the government. Great to have a president that supports our first responders. Ron said his mouth wrote a huge check that I don't know how he can cash it. So we'll see. I think he's saying he had a lot of promises, like all politicians. That always happens. Tammy said, so glad Donald Trump is president and Obama is gone. Plus, he gave an awesome speech. And Marty said, talk in response to what I was saying in terms of my criticisms of Trump's speech. He said, cop killings at an all-time high, Chicago murder rate. I think he did say at some point this weekend about smaller government. I also heard something about $10 trillion in government cuts over 10 years. I'll tell you one thing. Because I talked about it on my show yesterday, the idea of him cutting $10 trillion over 10 years. If he gets that accomplished, I'll become the biggest Trump fan you've ever seen. So that's definitely good. Another person commented and said, you really don't think illegal immigrants take our jobs? I didn't say illegal immigrants don't take our jobs. Illegal immigrants do take our jobs. What Trump is talking about is countries overseas taking all our jobs. He wants high tariffs so we can't have free trade with other countries. I'm not so much talking about illegal immigrations coming into the country. I understand they take our jobs because it makes no sense. But when you look at the facts of free trade, yes, they have taken some, but the majority of the factory jobs have not been taken by free trade. Our manufacturing output has actually increased significantly since NAFTA, and the most of what's taken the factory jobs is automation, not free trade. But I'm totally for building the wall and getting rid of illegal immigration. Don't misunderstand me. Don't confuse the two. So that's what I wanted to point out there as well. Okay, Trump is getting to work today. First thing he did was the Senate confirmed Mattis for Secretary of Defense. He signed a bill which had a waiver since he was in the military not long ago. Kellyanne Conway is confirmed for Kellyanne Conway. John Kelly. Senate approves Trump's pick for Homeland Security Secretary. And Trump orders regulatory freeze, tells agencies to ease Obamacare burden. That makes me very happy. The regulatory freeze is great. I think that is definitely a great move as well. There was other thing I saw that I heard today. If you go to the White House website, it got rid of everything talking about climate change and fighting climate change and put in things about energy exploration and getting America's energy back on track. That was one of the main reasons I voted for Trump. One of the main reasons I voted for Trump was because I think we need to explore for more energy. We have so much untapped natural resources, energy resources, that it will be great. Yeah, Mattis is on TV right now on Fox. He's getting sworn in already. It's good to see that they're getting to work, and that's what he said they would do. He said they would get to work. So 407-916-5400, text to 23680. Trump is getting to work. I think he will actually do a lot his first 100 days. I think he will. And he's lucky enough to have a Republican Congress, on his side as well, to back him as well. So that will help him accomplish a lot. So, and I talked about earlier in the show, it is so glad. I listened to Obama's press conference yesterday. Oh, I'm just so glad he's gone. I don't have to listen to those anymore. Some of the stuff he was saying was just, for one, it's the whole, he can't answer a question. He just yeah. You like, get it on to the point. It drives me nuts. But the other thing is, it was more division. It was more, we still have all these problems of racism. We still have all these other things. And it's just, I couldn't even listen to it anymore. So I also want your take as well. I'm going to talk about in the next segment. There's two things I plan on doing in the next segment. One, I'm going to talk about my favorite inaugural addresses in history. And two, something that's going to be unpopular and why I don't trust politicians. Because there was actually some big similarities between Trump's speech and Obama's first inaugural. And it's really not saying there's similarities between these two. This is what, like I said, a lot of politicians do. It's not just them two. And I'll play that next as well. 47916-5400. This is Beyond Reason Radio.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is a special inauguration edition of your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. This is Beyond Reason Radio. If you missed any of the show, I already went through everything I liked about Trump's inaugural address. If you missed any of that, make sure to catch the podcast of the entire show, which I will post after the show anywhere podcasts are available, and my criticism of Trump's speech as well. So I'm going to go over in a sec my favorite inaugural addresses in history. Because, like I said, I get very reflexive during this time period. A lot of people get emotional. A lot of people apparently get angry, and there's protests and all this stuff. Some people just don't care. But I get contemplative. I get reflexive. I guess that's just how my mind works. I think about the history. I think about the ramifications. I think about what happens next and how this compares to history and all that and so forth. So I went back and I watched some old inaugural addresses. I watched Obama's. I watched some other ones, and I read ones, that you can't watch because obviously they didn't have TV or YouTube back then. I couldn't find it. Couldn't find George Washington's inaugural on YouTube. What the heck? How come it wasn't there? But so we went back on that. But this to me is a great example because of something I noticed today, and a lot of people are not going to like me for doing this, but oh well, I'm used to that. This is something I noticed today. This is why I don't trust politicians, because they all seem to make the same promises, no matter who it is. I noticed some similarities between Trump and Obama's inaugural, and it's not just them, it's all of them. This is, just listen to this.
We will build new roads and highways and bridges and airports and tunnels and railways all across our wonderful nation. We will get our people off of welfare and back to work, rebuilding our country with American hands and American labor. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow.
We will build the roads and bridges, the electric grids and digital lines that feed our commerce and bind us together. We will restore science to its rightful place and wield technology's wonders to raise healthcare's quality and lower its cost. We will harness the sun and the winds and the soil to fuel our cars and run our factories, and we will transform our schools and colleges and universities to meet the demands of a new age. All this we can do. All this we will do.
We will no longer accept politicians who are all talk and no action, constantly complaining but never doing anything about it. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action.
The state of our economy calls for action, bold and swift, and we will act, not only to create new jobs, but to lay a new foundation for growth.
Notice the similarities? I mean, literally. One was Trump's inaugural, one was Obama's. Obama was the same thing. You know, we're going to build roads and bridges and science and everything else that will happen in America and will be amazing. We're going to have all this great stuff in schools. And then you hear Trump. Trump says, we're going to build roads and science and have all this other stuff and it'll be amazing. And it's like the same. And then Trump, we'll be Obama. It deserves action. And we'll be an administration of action. And then Trump, we're going to have action and an administration of action. And it's just like, it was just something I noticed that I'm like, this is what politicians do. Now, some people think Trump will actually pull it all off. I really hope he does. I'm really hoping he does and wishing he does. But it's just something I noticed when I listen to politicians speak. They all say these same things, that America's crummy. It needs all this rebuilding, and the president's going to rebuild it all. And I'm just the kind of person that's like, okay, the president doesn't have that much power, and he shouldn't have that much power. Why are we putting all our hopes and dreams in the president? That's just me. I know I'm going to get in so much trouble for pointing that out, by the way. Okay, before the end of the show, I thought I would point out my favorite inaugural addresses in history. Really good ones. Number 3, I would have to say, I'll just do the top 3. Number 3, and I should have got audio of this, but I didn't. But number 3 has to be, I went back and watched it today, has to be Reagan's first inaugural address. I would encourage people to go back and listen and watch that. Just, for one, you could tell he loved his country. You could tell he was humbled by what was happening. A couple times he literally tears up. But he talked about the founding. He talked about the role of government and how it needs to be limited. He talked about the idea of America and why it works. And he did talk about the problems as well. But he did it specifically. I was going back and I was watching, and he said interest rates are too high, inflation's too high, tax burden's too high. It was very specific. He says, we're going to get rid of those things. And he did for the most part. And so, but there was just a profound awe of his country in that speech. And in terms of ones I've watched, I've never seen anything like it. I think it's better than Kennedy's inaugural, personally. I would encourage everyone to go watch that. The best ever. Now, my second favorite is one I can't watch, like I said before, and that's George Washington's first inaugural address. It's just amazing when you think about this, because he could have been king. He was the most popular president, ever. And yet this is what he said. In parts of his inaugural, he says, on the one hand, I was summoned by my country, whose voice I can never hear, but with veneration and love, from a retreat which I had chosen with the fondest predilection, and in my flattering hopes with an immutable decision as the asylum of my declining years, of frequent interruptions. It says, on the other hand, the magnitude and difficulty of the trust to which the voice of my country called me, being sufficient to awaken the wisest and most experienced of her citizens, a distrustful scrutiny into his qualifications could not but overwhelm with despondence one who, inheriting inferior endowments from nature and unpracticed in the duties of civil administration, ought to peculiarly conscious of his own deficiencies. He talks about, and then he says later, such being the impressions under which I have, in obedience to the public summons, repaired to the present situation, it would be improper to admit in the first official act my fervent supplications to that almighty being who rules over the universe, who presides in the council of nations, whose providential aids can supply every human defects, that his benediction may consecrate to the liberties and happiness of the people of the United States a government execute with success the functions allotted to his charge. Yeah, and my favorite one, that's my second, and I love the humility of that one. My favorite one, though, is this one. This isn't actually him doing it, but video from a movie. This one.
mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet if God wills that it continue until all the wealth piled by the bondman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword. As was said 3,000 years ago, so still it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. With malice toward none, charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and a lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.
Lincoln's second inaugural address. Read it. The best one ever, I think. And actually one that is needed in these times, I think, as well, with our divisions. Thank you for listening to Beyond Reason Radio. I will be back on Monday. Thank you so much. And talk to you next time.